end of his consumer, you have to deliver for them. This channel.
I
COVID did a
remember
lot.
my mother also died of cancer, lung cancer.
Reading and entertainment, free.
You know, I had a choice in that process of writing being myself.
Register for within deep thoughts. But as a loving father,
Even with embarrassing.
Sue Donnellan, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, love having people on that can help other folks. And speaking of, you can help out other parents. You have a #1 best-selling book called Secrets to Parenting Without Giving a Beep.
Yeah.
I censored myself.
Oh, that's okay. Many people do.
And you are also the founder of Ask Mom Parenting Platform, which helps to remove the daily overwhelm from parenting. So let me ask you, how did you get started in this realm? Of course, you are a parent. You have 4 children, including triplets. So that gives you some legitimacy right there. But I mean, how did you go down this road to write this book?
Well, I pretty much chronicle my journey of discovery as a parent in the book. So when you read the book, you learn through my mistakes in the beginning. I wasn't a overwhelmingly anxious parent in terms of wanting to be a parent. Like my husband loves children, and I'll have a couple kids for you. And I ended up with natural surprise triplets and went from 1 to 4 kids overnight, and was yelling all the time. And I run my own business, and my husband was in the military, and it just became overwhelming. And I found myself yelling and just trying to figure out how to motivate these kids and how do you get behavior to change. And I just was thrown in the deep end and didn't know anything about kids and what to do and how to motivate them. So I had a huge journey myself. I had a big learning curve in terms of just a straight vertical line of, okay, what does it mean to be a parent? And it required a lot of self-awareness. And, I went to a couple of parenting classes in the beginning and had to learn what kids are capable of and how smart they really are, how aware they really are. And so basically my journey of becoming a yelling parent and not, a punishing parent, pretty much like, go to your room or all those types of things. And I realized that other parents were all having the same issues. And after reading a few books and taking a couple of classes, I found that my innate abilities to use psychology and to understand the nuances of parenting and motivation and those type of things started coming out in me. And the things that I was doing to help get behavior changes was working. And little by little, I started helping other parents. And anyway, by the time the kids got to be a teenager, I started writing my book and chronicling all of the, different things that I did that were successful.
Right. Oh, wonderful. Now, the age of your children are
21 and 24.
21 and 24. Which so 21 is the group of triplets.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So they're what, in college?
They're in college. They're all seniors this year. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That in and of itself. I think I was watching the Today Show this morning, and they were getting ready to profile a set of parents who had 2 back-to-back within 13-month identical twins.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's like, oh my goodness, maybe I should watch their show. But, so let's go to the yelling. And, there's this old school parenting. I spoke to somebody about this the other day, where, it was not uncommon for a parent to say to a child, I'm going to whip you. I'm going to spank you. And then the yelling, all of that is in that old school parenting frame. How did you get beyond being that yelling parent? Because, that yelling really was just pulling stress on you. I mean, they may have been hearing you yell, but I mean, that was quite stressful on you to yell. So how did you get out and away from the yelling, the first component from to get to a better parenting journey?
Well, it first starts, as with parenting, with anything really, self-awareness is the key.
Mhm.
So in the book, I broke it out as the first half is about your relationship with yourself, like letting go of control, not doing guilt, these types of things. So it
Right.
starts with you, and it starts with the
Mhm.
self-awareness. And in so doing, with the yelling, my oldest, I would yell at him, and I would just see his eyes glaze over, and I would see that he was just kind of not, he was not listening. He wasn't
No.
resonating. And I, as I'm working, I'm a type A, I don't have time for all of this. So
Yeah.
he would get the kids to be, the triplets were crying, and it was just a lot of attention getting
Yeah.
behavior.
Right.
So the first thing was I had to notice that my yelling wasn't working, and I had to notice the reaction that I was getting from my child. That when I was yelling, he just sort of tuned me out. So I had to start learning some new ways of parenting and new ways of getting through to him. And
Mhm.
what I
Mhm.
discovered over time, and especially just having like a little mini classroom myself with 4 kids, I had a lot of little things that I could test with them.
Right.
Um, I started noticing that with parenting, everything with kids is phases.
Ah,
So if you see behavior twice, it becomes a phase or a pattern. And I started
mhm.
recognizing that, okay, well, every time he goes into the playpen, I had a huge playpen for all three, the
Okay.
kids cry. And so the two components that I noticed were, the pattern that this was happening frequently, and also just the fact that he wasn't behaving, he wasn't listening to me when I yelled. So I started to
Right.
back up and predict and break the patterns. So all right, when you're overwhelmed, you tend to just allow life to happen. You start to just allow
Yeah.
these events to take place, and now the
Right.
only thing you're left with is, the only choice you have is to yell.
Right.
So what I did was I backed up my efforts and said, okay, whenever he goes in there, he makes the kids cry. And I had to say, okay, let's back this up before you go in there. If somebody cries, what should we do about that? So I broke the pattern. We established a rule. I established my expectation, and then we had to discuss. So it was really kind of an awareness of me realizing that at 5 years old, he's able to have an intelligent conversation of what
Mhm.
my expectations are. And so when we set
Mhm.
those, and sure enough, when someone cries, I don't have to go and yell at him. All I have to do
Right.
is say, what did we talk about? All right, let's
Right.
get out. And so I was able to interrupt that pattern and get results without yelling.
Right.
And I was parenting in advance, which is something that I teach parents. And there's a whole
Mhm.
strategy toward how we can parent in advance and interrupt patterns. And I teach a lot of those methods. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
but so secondary to that was, so you get the parenting in advance and interrupting patterns, but then you also have this understanding that with kids, I with one of these books that I read, it taught me an awareness that kids that are misbehaving are feeling discouraged. And I
Right.
really thought that. I thought, he knows what he's doing. He's just being a pain. He's just trying to get attention. And I was fighting that methodology.
Yeah.
And when I finally switched gears and thought, oh, let me try it. So when he starts behaving like that, it's a bid for attention. He's feeling discouraged. Let me meet that with a hug, more positive parenting.
Right.
And
Right.
let me spend more one-on-one time with him. And
Right.
boy, that works. you know,
Oh, wow.
That really works. Now, does
Yeah.
that mean that we don't get angry and we don't, we're human? But I
Right.
can say that that's what really turned the corner for me, was
Right.
just, again, self-awareness, looking at things that I'm doing that are creating this behavior, and how do
Mhm.
I change to affect a different result from my child?
Right. 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 Well, let's say I am a parent and I come to you for help, and embedded in that old school parenting. I'm embedded that when a child is crying and screaming on the floor and doing a temper tantrum, that child is just bad. The
Mhm.
child is just bad, and like you were saying yourself, they're just seeking attention. And if I'm embedded and I don't want to take a look at myself, how do you convince the parent to take a look at themselves?
Well, one of the things that I'll do is I'll sit and I'll listen to a parent and they'll tell me about all their justifications as to I'm
Mm,
tired, I'm stressed, and they'll justify their behavior. And I'll listen and I'll let them come out with it. And then I'll ask them, what are you doing now? And then I just ask them, how's that working? How's what you're doing working, right? So are you repeating the same behavior of yelling and punishing and timeouts and not getting any different results? Are you ready to try something new? Sometimes to these parents, it's a radical change. Are you ready to
yeah,
try something radically new
mm,
to see how that will work for you?
right.
Um, and then from there, it depends. I mean, a lot of times by the time somebody comes to me, they are in a position of having put that self-awareness going, I don't know what else to do. They want to do something different. They want to do something better. They innately feel like this yelling and screaming and timeouts and punishing is doesn't feel good, but they
Right,
don't know what else to do. And usually by that
right,
time, they're a lot more open to what other options are there. Then we talk about the psychology of basically just respectful parenting and
right,
how we all think as parents we are showing respect, but then I'm able to show in different scenarios how in fact we aren't showing respect and
right.
what does respect look like and how does respect feel when we're being treated with respect. So it's
Right.
a mind shift, really. It's
Yes.
a huge shift of thinking.
Yeah, it definitely is. I just think about the fact that I was raised by parents who were children during the Depression, and they were deeply rooted into the old school parenting,
Mhm.
and I'm just trying to think, wow, if there were more people like you when I was growing up, it would have been fantastic because you can carry that parenting on from one generation to the next.
Well, 100%. And that's why it takes of the first thing I talk to parents about is self-awareness, because when we put that mirror on ourselves,
Mhm.
we're able to then the sky's the limit on what kind of behavior we get and how our relationships change. So parenting is about relationships. The first half of the book I talk about your relationship with yourself. We take those things that we've learned and we apply it to the second half, which is your relationship with your child. And it
Mhm.
takes you through that whole journey. So it's a comprehensive book in terms of how do I get behavior to change, but also how do I affect relationships in my life? And when
Right,
you learn the methods that I teach, it changes your relationships with your friends, with your spouse, your partners, like whoever that you're dealing with. Because when you're willing to own your behavior and have accountability and say, okay, well, I am willing to admit that what I'm doing isn't working.
right,
Okay, great. Let me put that over here, and then let me see what these ideas are, and let me try them and see how my child responds to that.
right.
So yeah, we do repeat those issues, and I did sit with myself and say, as much as I was real close with my mom
Right.
and I was raised great, my mom was a micromanager and she did ground me a lot, and
Yeah.
it forced me to lie. And then
Yeah,
I really
yeah,
sat with myself and said, I don't want my kids to lie to me. What can I do to, and my kids, honestly, these methods that I teach, the kids we have very open relationships because the judgment is removed and the teaching and
right,
training. I talk about the fact that children are adults in training, and when again, it's a
right,
mental shift. When we think of things differently, it's our choice as to how we view and what our perspective is on anything. So we can
right,
choose to see any situation in any way. And by working with a mentor or a coach, when someone shows you a different perspective that you can apply that works,
right.
then it really starts to open up for them.
Right, right, right. Exactly, exactly. Well, now we know now that the old school stuff of quote unquote whooping a child, spanking a child, grounding a child, and timeouts and all these things. What do you do when there is negative behavior of a child? So if those don't work, what does?
Well, by the time I get to the end of my book, I have a chapter that says punishment is pointless. And all of the things that we learn in the previous chapters build to accumulate, to build upon each other. So by the time you get to that last chapter, you realize and understand why it doesn't work and what to do instead. So what I would say to that is that what I teach is a way to bake in accountability and
Okay.
partnership
Okay.
with your child to where where the child has a say.
Right.
So one of the things that the overwhelming, I guess, awareness that parents come away with is that, did you ask the child? They'll ask them. We feel as parents that we have to have all the answers and that we have to administer rules and things like that,
Mhm.
that are just applying that to the child without
Right.
any discourse, any discussion. And then when the child pushes back, we are angry with them. But in any
Right.
other relationship we have, whether it's our spouse or our friend, we don't apply that methodology to anyone else in our lives. And so
Right.
when we start thinking about how to treat our child as an adult in training, or even we talk about curfews,
Mhm.
you thought about asking your child what they think a fair curfew is? And
Right.
how do we
Right.
negotiate and get to the middle of what I find acceptable and they find acceptable? And how do we bake in that accountability factor where we agree and now there's going to be a consequence if they don't keep their curfew. So let's agree to 11:30. And if they don't come
Right.
home at 11:30, but if they've agreed to it, like they're more apt to feel
Right.
respected and heard, and they're more apt to come home. And these types of techniques work very well. So when you're building in at even a young age that accountability factor, like I talked about with my son. Well, if you go in and make them cry, what are we going to do about that?
Right.
What do you agree to? And we have these types of words that we discuss with them about what do we agree, what are we going to do, and it's all we language. They
Right.
tend to behave, and we
Right.
don't we sort of sidestep a lot of those struggles that we build ourselves by making
Right.
dictations and making demands and not getting them in on the process.
Right. Right.
We walk
Exactly.
ourselves right into some type of skirmish that we brought ourselves there.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I just think about something you touched on earlier about you can have a very intelligent conversation with a very young child.
mhm,
And I think it's about that communication that parents, will say that gives them authority, but it also gives the child some authority to have a certain type of communication with your child. And one of the things that I had to realize, I have two sons and they're 5 years apart. They're now 25 and 20. But I had to realize parenting is not a one size fit all to each child. You cannot parent children, like the same iron hand type of thing, and my sons were two totally different people. So I had to go in, you had to go in kind of with a custom based
mhm.
type of parenting skills depending on the child.
That's 100% correct. Every child is different, and we have to look at that and honor it. And it's very nuanced. Being a parent
Mhm.
is nuanced. One size does not fit all. Some
Right.
kids do need a little bit more, a tighter leash,
Right.
or more supervised. I like to create I'm a big culture person. So when I talk to parents, it's like you own the culture,
Right.
like any kind of boss, right? So leadership is important. Where as parents, we're leaders. I teach this mentality that we are fostering the environment with which they can make choices, and which which they can have decision making power. So
Right.
you set the tone for them to be able to make their own decisions within your rule set. Some
Right.
kids can make decisions here, and some kids can have all this space to make decisions. So
Right.
uh, each child is different. I know, like with my oldest, he showed a little bit more discipline early on and never had a curfew by the time he got to senior in high school. Whereas the triplets, they were pushing things a little bit because there's three of them. So things were a
Right.
little different. So I kind of kept
Yeah.
it tighter with them. And I don't have to mention it to them. I just have to know as a parent, oh, there's a 3-year gap between them. They didn't know that the older didn't have a curfew. They don't know, it's being a parent is like a little mini psychologist, right? We have
It
to
is.
understand, yeah. But there are different techniques that we can use, and yes, each child needs to be treated differently as to how their personality is shaped.
Right, right, right. Somebody, and I'm going to get this right. And somebody said this many years ago. And I know a lot of people want to become parents. I think just like getting married, and some people fall in love with the wedding,
Mm.
and the whole wedding aspect and having a big, beautiful wedding, but they're not necessarily ready to be married to a person that you got to look at every single day, and their little habits that they have and the compromises, and then you're in your marriage, and then surprise, they do something or say something that you had never heard before, and then it's just like, what? So then I see a lot of parents, that people, individuals that want to have children. And I'm like, well, yes, but you can easily be a mom or a dad, but are you ready to be a parent?
Mm.
I think a lot of people don't think about that. Babies are beautiful. They are fun to dress up and do cute TikTok. I see tons of beautiful kids doing TikToks and all these reels and all these kind of things. But are they being parented?
Well, that's a great point. I like that because any of us can be a mom or a dad. It's
Mhm.
not hard, right? In
Right.
fact, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to become a mom or a dad, right?
Exactly.
But to be a parent, whole new thing.
Whole other
Whole
thing.
new definition of what it takes to raise that child. And we can't be selfish. We can't
Right.
be, we need to have our self-awareness, but we need to be ready to invest in that child monetarily,
Right.
psychologically, emotionally. It's a huge
Yes.
investment where we are
Yes.
now in the back burner. So if
Yes.
you're not ready to, and I tell that to my kids, um, at their age, I'm like, your 20s are your selfish years. Have your
It
selfish years
is.
because, don't muddy the waters with, have your goals, discover your purpose, discover where you're going to add value in this world and go at it. Uh,
Right.
then when you want to have children, you can add value by putting a new person out into the world who can then add value. But right
Mhm.
now, these are your selfish years. And don't feel guilty about that. Don't feel guilty. I'm
Exactly.
a big anti-guilt person.
Yeah.
It's just a wasted emotion. And I talk
It
to a lot of
is.
mom guilt is probably one of the biggest things that I hear from moms and
Yeah.
dads, especially even if you're a single parent, it's one of the most difficult emotions that they struggle with. And I just like wipe that right off the table. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's easy.
Right.
Don't. It's a wasted emotion. And I have a very good chapter on guilt and all of the different, I break it out into all the different categories and how it makes you appear to your children. And um, literally, it's a wasted emotion. If you made a mistake, fix it. If you need to apologize, apologize, wipe
Right.
it off, and keep moving.
Right.
So that is, yeah, it's interesting. You know, we have a lot of different choices that we can approach these things with that make a
Yes.
difference. But yeah, have your selfish years, take your time, and again, as parents, we're leaders,
Right.
so it's a different mentality in how I approach parenting.
Right. Exactly. And don't forget the mini psychologist, as you said.
Mhm.
never
Yeah.
thought about that, but that's true. Very
Right.
true.
Yes.
Now, so how do parents get in touch with you, Sue, that may want to go beyond the book?
Yeah. So on Ask Mom Parenting, I do have a free 20-minute consultation that I will discuss with parents that let's just talk, see if this is a fit, see where you're at. And so on my website, there's there's prompts to just click and sign up with me for 20 minutes free and let's discuss it. I have found that reading the book is a great precursor to our
Mhm.
talks. We can spend a lot less time together when we kind of when they've had a chance to understand what the book is about. But either way,
Right.
it's not a requirement at all. But askmomparenting.com.
Wow. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll have all of your contact information in the podcast show notes as well as the video description box on YouTube. Wow,
Okay.
Sue, this has been a very enlightening conversation. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
a lot of parents' eyes and ears will wake up when they hear this interview. Thank you so much for this information. Very important.
Thank you very much, Deidre. I appreciate your having me.
Thank you.